Hello, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. Appreciate you all waiting and being patient. It took me a little while to remember how to set up the Facebook Live and also how to get my Zoom and everything ready. So I appreciate everybody's patience with that. Thank you so much for joining me. For everybody on Zoom, I appreciate you being here on time. It means a lot to me. And thank you so much for showing up for the second piece of my story. And I'm also going live on Facebook just in case folks are not able to join at this time on Zoom. So I'll be able to post this later on. But I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing the space with me and putting aside some time. So my name's Erin Dixon. As you all may know, I'll be facilitating this space for handling both the tech and the speaking. So please, if there's any questions or comments, please do leave them towards the end. That way I can take a pause from the holding of the space with the tech. And also I ask that everyone uphold an air of mutual respect in the chats and in the comments in the space, just so everybody sort of understands that we want to keep and maintain a mutual respective sort of space in the comments or anything. And if at any time my internet sort of goes in and out, please just do hang tight and I'll be right back on as soon as I can. And please be mindful also of your safety during this event. If you are driving, please do use hands-free options, just keeping in mind if you're operating a motor vehicle, just to be safe on that piece. So thank you for allowing me to speak that for a moment. And with that, I'll go ahead and introduce myself, traditional Navajo language. So Yat-e, Erin Dixon Yinche, Kintlachitni Nishla, Tachitni Bahastin, Kia Ani Dashiche, Nakadine Dashanele, Sebedai, Dat Nasha, the Nebekeya. I am on the Navajo Reservation in Shiprock, New Mexico. I am born, actually I am of the Red House clan, born for Red Streak Through the Water. I am Navajo. And I invited you to this space with me, and I thank you all for giving me that moment to introduce myself. But I invited you to the space of storytelling with me, to share space of not only like art and authenticity. I also wanted to honor it as a way of explaining the world around us and changes of the seasons and the cycles of life. In many ways, like I said before, it's a medicine that links thought to words. When thoughts are filtered through the heart space before the words leave the lips, I feel is a very powerful thing about storytelling. And also, I felt called to tell my story in hopes that someone might resonate or find something inspirational from what I share. And also to honor the parts of me that I have, that have transformed through this journey, and brought me to this space right here today. So I also want to honor that. And finally, I just wanted to acknowledge, lastly, before we start, is just acknowledge nature as our true teacher. And I like to always think of the air, water, fire, and earth in ether as our common living ancestors. So with that, I want to say Kyahe Yat-e. And it's good. So thank you so much for coming. And before we start, I really would love for us to take a moment to just do a brief meditation together to kind of clear the space, not only to help me, but also to invite you all here to the space with me. So if you are able to, I invite you to just take a moment to check in with yourself. And I'm going to close my eyes. And if you're safe and comfortable enough to do that, I invite you to do the same. Otherwise, just kind of focus on the breath. So in this moment, I like to just draw in some refreshing air. breathing naturally, whatever feels good for you in this moment. Just breathing in the air, noticing for me, a lot of tightness around my chest, a little bit of tightness in the throat. And I invite you to do the same, and just check in with yourself in this moment. Noticing with each breath, drawing in deeper and exhaling, intentionally emptying the lungs. And if you feel called to, you can definitely follow me in breathing in through the nose and exhale through the mouth. In through the nose and exhale through the mouth. And this kind of breathing helps to calm the nervous system. It allows the mind to be at rest while you focus on your breath. And if thoughts come, let them come. Not attaching to one too long. Just bringing the focus right back to the breath again. Each inhale intentional. Each exhale intentional. And that attention I'd like you to draw to just noticing how your body feels in this moment. The expansion of the chest and the rise of the shoulders as you inhale. Noticing the relaxation of the shoulders as you exhale. And in just this moment, just notice. Knowing in this moment, all you need to do is just breathe here with me. Breathing in and breathing out. Letting what happened before you came to the space be. And letting what may need to happen after, letting that be. But just for now, being here with the breath. Two more nice deep breath cycles together. That last exhale, I invite you to come back to yourself in this moment. And whatever your body feels called to do, I encourage you to do it if you need to stretch. Find your space in this moment. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes slowly. If you had them closed. Thank you so much for allowing me that moment to do that. I always feel like that brings me to such a really grounded place. So thank you for giving me that moment. And again, I want to say thank you everybody for tuning in and listening to the second part 2 of my storytelling series, Double Spirit. This is entitled part 2, The Changing One. So after some reflection, I was looking back and I was trying to think about how I wanted to start the story. And for me, it seemed appropriate to start exactly where I left off from the last tale, which was in Good Shining Stone Woman, where I had the evening of getting my name. And when I had went home, it was a full moon and I had so many vivid dreams. And I wrote down a whole, maybe 3 or 4 pages of the dreams that came to me that night. And one of them I had to mention because it really ties into how I sort of led myself to where I am right now. So in that night of the dreams, after I had gotten my name, my grandfather, who was alive at the time, he actually just passed this past October. And our family is still feeling sort of the loss of that and the grief of that. So I really love him. But at the time when this dream came to me, he was still alive. And in my dream, he came to me and he had another message for me. So in my dream that night, I was having so many vivid dreams. And I remember I kept waking up and I kept waking up through the night. And they were so vivid. And there was this one dream where I had been in this sort of like a village almost. And there was this house. And behind the house was another house. And there was people gathered in that home and they were all having fun. And I needed to get into the house next to it, but I couldn't because the door was like jammed. And every time I tried to open it, I couldn't get in. And so as I was looking through the window in my dream into that house, I could see this bundle. It was like a case. It was right there, smack dab in the middle of the room. And I could see it as I was looking through the window. And I thought, oh man, I really need to get in there and get it just in case, I feel like somebody might try to grab it. I need to get it. And so I was like trying to get in there. And I had asked some people who were around, I said, do you know anything about how I can get into this? I checked and I'm not being able to get into this room. And people were like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I moved on. And as I was trying to open that door, it just wouldn't open. So as I was in my dream, I gave up. I turned around. Just as I was turning around, I saw my grandpa standing there. And he was right outside that house in my dream. And I saw him. And then he took my hand. He didn't really say nothing that much. He took my hand and he smeared like this yellow substance on my hand. And he says, here, try the door now. And I looked at my hand and it was like this luminescent yellow, almost highlighter, bright color to it. And I looked at my hand and I thought, oh, this is weird. Okay, so I went back to that door of that house and I reached for the door and I turned it. And as I was opening that door, as I was trying to open that door, my grandpa was right over my shoulder and he told me, he says, as I was opening that door, trying to open it with my newly painted yellow hand, he says, what belongs to you can never be taken away. He says, that's your inheritance. That's your gift. It's yours, meant for you and nobody else. Own it because it belongs to you. And as I was trying to open that door, somehow that yellow substance he smeared on my hand did allow me to open the door. I was able to just open the door and it was like nothing. And I got inside and I was so happy about it. And there in the middle of that room, there was that bundle. And so I opened it up. And as I started to look through it, I noticed that there was tools and there was medicine and there was even regalia in there and so many sacred things that I won't go deep into, but there was so many sacred things in there. And when I took that bag, I just remember what my grandpa told me about, like, what is yours, nobody can take from you. And so when I woke up, I felt so, like, once I saw what was in that bundle, I snapped out of it and I came back to, and I was like, wow, that was so profound. And I was so curious about that for a long time. And time went on, and that evening really shifted a lot of things for me. And I started to really embrace my name of Good Shining Stone Woman. And I used it every single time I went to ceremony, every single time I prayed or any time I made an offering, I always used that name, and I really embraced it. And time went on after I had got it, and I continued to go to and connect employed in the Twin Cities organization that's so beautiful. And I was part of a team where we did traditional birthing and birth work. So it was very rooted in Mother Earth teachings, and very rooted in the sacred embodiment of sort of birth work. So it was really beautiful. And I just felt like the more I leaned into my identity and who I was, I felt like I kept finding these beautiful ways. And so I really learned a lot of information at that time. And like I said, it was preparing me. I felt like it was preparing me for like the future to come. So the beautiful thing about being connected with that job was I had the privilege of connecting with our plant medicines, teachings of the tribes up north in Minnesota and up in North Dakota. Lots of like Lakota, Dakota, Nakota, Ojibwe, all of those folks up north very much brought me in and taught me so many beautiful things. And so I really embraced it, and I felt connected to that land there, and I felt supported by my indigenous relatives up north. But I really still felt sort of almost a bit of a disconnect from my own culture, which sort of kind of left me feeling like a little bit curious. So the beautiful thing was is that job I had, I was able to delve into teachings and learn stuff and actually go and find books and research. So I started doing a lot of research about the Neh ways, and I found this book. And this book was so cool at the time. It's called The Pollen Path. And this is an older book. It's a collection of accounts. And in that book, as I was reading it, and this was randomly, like probably maybe a year or so after I had gotten my name, and I was reading through that book. And in that book, I found a story about a Navajo hand trembler. And hand trembling is a practice that's done to diagnose for illnesses. And this is a practice that is done, that's ancient practice from long ago from our ancestors, and is passed down. It's still practiced today. And it's a practice where the energy flows through the hands. And so as I was reading through that book, I came upon that account, and this hand trembler was telling of how they prepare themselves for the ceremony, and how the chants that they go through, and how the prayers that they hold, and where they put that energy. And there was a part in that ritual she was talking about where she says she takes tutadine, which is yellow corn pollen. In the Navajo way, we use it in prayer. It's very, very comparable to asema or tobacco or kinnick. That's what we do our offerings with. So in that book, as I was reading, it says that she takes the corn pollen and she wipes it across her hands as she's ready to do her work. And she says she wipes enough to where it turns her whole palm yellow. And when I read that, I had the biggest like, whoa, like moment of chills. Like that in my dream was kind of very much like what my grandpa had done to my hand. And so in that moment, I thought, there's something that's really calling me to explore this, to explore what this energy is in my hand, and also how do I use it. And so I was so so excited and like wanting to learn, and I couldn't find the teacher. I moved back here to the Navajo Nation, and I just could not find the teacher. I couldn't find a teacher. I still am not finding anybody, but hopefully one day I will. But so I kind of hit a stone wall, with getting those kind of teachings. So then what I did was I said, let me find another way. And so I said to myself, what teacher can I find? And I started looking up energy work. I started looking up sound healing and Reiki healing. And then I found Reiki healing was very similar to what the hand trembling and the energy that comes and flows from the hands. And so I said, I want that. I'm going to do that. So then what I did, once I started kind of getting stonewalled and I couldn't find a teacher, I couldn't really be accepted, because it's like, understanding from indigenous perspective is like, our people have gone through so much oppression that it becomes so hard to accept people that, even though they are of your ancestry, it's hard to bring in people that you don't know. It's hard to take a chance. So I don't hold that against anybody. It's just, it hurt me a little bit. But what I did in that moment was, instead of holding on to that, I switched that and I said, what am I going to do? So what I did was I made a list. I made a list of the things that I felt like I could work on for myself. Because at the moment I felt like I couldn't go anywhere or do much in the community that I'm in. So I said, let me turn this perspective and let me turn it inwards and find out what I can do. And so I made a list, and on that list, I added Reiki healing, I added yoga, I added sound healing, and I also wanted to honor my name, Good Shining Stone Woman. And I said, I want to honor that by starting this business. And I want this name to not only exist within my spiritual movements, but I want it to exist in an entity here on earth as well. So I wanted to honor that name with Good Shining Stone Women. And that's why I have the business called Shining Stone Wellness. It's to honor that. So I made that list, and I became determined to grow spiritually and energetically. So I reached out to my rainbow family, as I like to call them, is all of the people outside of all colors and all walks of life that I feel like have an intention in their heart and calling. And so I did that. I reached out and I went out on a limb. And since I couldn't find teachers from my own ancestry, then I would find teachers who were willing to teach me with the time that I had. So I searched around for programs online for all of those programs, classes and trainings and certificates or certifications. And I found a really great program here in Farmington, not too far away from where I'm at. And it's a wonderful sacred spiral Reiki. So I was able to find that find them, and my teacher is so wonderful. And it's another aspect that I just have to mention too, is that when I found her and I went my first, so I did my first 2 levels, or actually I've done all 3 levels. So I finished my very last level of master level Reiki in October, just this past October. And, but my teacher was just so wonderful. And I knew when I met her, I could tell just by the way she looked at me and the way she sort of created the space when we met in person. I saw that look in her eye, and it was familiar. It was the same look that I got from when I met that medicine man in the shake tent. And the shake tent, the medicine man that did the shake tent is no longer with us in this world. And his last name was Kingbird. And I just wanted to pay respect and homage to him too. But when I met my teacher, my Reiki teacher, and she looked at me in my eyes, and as I was speaking with her, my story, I felt that same thing. I saw in her eyes like that same acceptance, that feeling of like, wow, like, that's the same thing I want to embody. I want to embody that ability to see somebody like honestly and wholly without judging. So when I met her, I just knew right away that it was going to be a really good thing. So I felt great about deciding to do Reiki healing just like 30 miles away. And so as I did the Reiki healing, I went through 2, so there's 3 attunements. The first 1 and 2 attunements are focused on The first level is focused on self-healing, and then the second level is focused on distance healing. So in this distance healing, I did this past summer, and during my journey, I went through this sort of awakening. It's like it tuned me into sort of like a different level of awareness, not only like in my body, but also like spiritual awareness. And so it tuned me in. And then soon I became sort of a little bit, I started feeling more confident. And so I started looking up yoga, and I started looking up sound healing. Where can I find places like that? And where can I get certifications? And as I looked it up, they were so expensive. Some of the yoga classes I found that were available here in the United States, even online, were running upwards of like $5,000. And I was like, God, how am I going to even do that? So then I just kind of was like, okay, well, that's, I don't know, 5,000 is really, really steep. So I said, let me kind of step back. So I said, let me take a look and see, just for kicks, let me look and see how much it costs to actually go to India and take a class and to get my training, and how much would it cost for airfare. And it turns out that it was much less than a lot of what the US trainers were charging, upwards of like $3,000 to $5,000. And so I decided, I said, I'm going to do it then. I said, I'm going to step out of my comfort zone. I'm going to complete this 200-hour yoga training, and I'm going to go to Rishikesh, India, and I'm also going to complete my sound healing training there. And so in that moment, I made that decision, and I did it kind of scared, but I did it because I felt confident. And at the time, how I had sort of come up with the funds was the wonderful organization I had mentioned earlier about the Center for Mind Body Medicine. They invited me on to do faculty work with them and the contracting work. And so that summer and that spring, I had done 2 trainings. And so I saved up that money, and it was my intention to bring those funds towards the future in paying for all of those things that I wanted to do. So in my way, I was almost as if I was like bringing all of those beautiful energies that I was helping with this work and bringing it with me to India. And that's what I did. Like a lot of times, every time that I could think of it, I would wake up in the morning and I would thank all the people that were part of my journey, even whether if you know me or not, and if you're part of my journey and you're part of my story, whether you interpret that as good or bad, for me, I'm grateful because it was an experience all around, and I am who I am because of all of that. So I was so grateful and it made me feel like something special was waiting for me there, because of the fact of how all of this came together, and how all of the energy I was coming and bringing with me, and my people that I had support from, and I was bringing all of these people with me. And I even told my mom, I said, you're coming with me too, in my heart, like I'm bringing all these people with me. And so I went for it. Fearlessly, I decided to go to Rishikesh, India to learn yoga and sound healing. And I honor that place and the teachers highly, because they brought me in and they shared with me all the things my spirit and my heart was calling out for. I loved it there. It was so transformative. It truly, it really brought me back to myself. It helped me remember why I traveled around the world to learn something I could have learned online, or, in Farmington, 30 miles away. And also too, I thought a lot about how I had never left Turtle Island, let alone the United States even. And here I was in a totally different place, but somehow I felt right. I felt it just felt very comforting. And it was one of the most transformative experiences that I ever had. And I'm so very grateful for everybody that had helped me to get there. Yeah. And So it was beautiful and a totally different place, but I embraced it, and I am so grateful for all of the people that had brought me there, your energy, the funds that I got, everything. I appreciate that. And I just want to pay it forward and share as much as I need, as I feel like I should. So as I was there, I was a Navajo in India, and it was fabulous. I had a great time. I sent a lot of pictures to my dad, and like I'd just be walking down and I'd send him a picture, and he'd be like, "Oh wow, it doesn't look much different from the res out there, huh?" And I'm all like, "Nope, it's about the same. Indians everywhere," I say. We had a good laugh about that. I was like, "Yep, it's the same thing. Everywhere I look, there's Indians as far as the eye can see. Same thing as the res." But it was funny. We had a good laugh about that. So as I was in India doing this yoga training and doing the sound healing training, I was also taking 2 online college courses at the same time, online. And also I was holding weekly online mind body medicine skills groups at 2 a.m. Indian time. And my emotions and my physical limits were being pushed, they were being forged. But the practice of yoga, it made me strong. It made me flexible, and it made me find like the strengths in my own weaknesses. It was very, very transformative. Like I said, every single day, it just felt like moment to moment was just this lucid experience of clarity, of connection, and the nature that was there. It just sung to me. I felt so close to the earth and the sky while I was there. It was beautiful and magical. And it also helped me to kind of find like this like sort of calm in a whirlwind, I knew that it taught me something, like as long as I do everything with truth in my heart and with loving intention, then I know I can be content with whatever the outcome is. So the times that I felt like I was at my breaking point, I felt like giving up on school. I felt like not waking up at 2 a.m. to do these groups. And I felt like withdrawing from class and going home because I was so stretched thin. But I also had another dream, in that dream when I was there that really gave me a lot of insight about how to look at things. And in that dream, I saw myself, the future me, talking about my experience there and how hard it was, but also talking about how grateful I was. And so when I woke up that morning, I kept that dream in my mind every single time I felt like I wanted to quit. Every single time I would break down and my body would not respond to me. I think that it kind of just brought me back out, was just to remember that dream of bringing in sort of that mindset of saying, I've already gone through this, because the future Erin's already sitting in the future talking about this experience. So when I leaned to that, that really helped me sort of keep a perspective of like, keep going through it, because somewhere in the future timeline, Erin's talking about how she already did it. So that really helped me get through that space. And so then I returned back to the US. I returned back, double dip Indian. I completed my final and my third Reiki attunement. So I finished the yoga, I finished the sound healing, and I also was able to pass my classes too, which was awesome. That was also a challenge in itself. But I also came right back and I finished up my very last Reiki attunement. So back again to that energy healing. It was the third Reiki attunement, which is the master level. And this master level was really powerful because I had just come back from India and I was so on this higher sort of awareness, and my crown chakra was tingling and my heart was on fire. Everything was spinning and moving, and I felt very balanced. And so when I came back, I finished that Reiki masterclass on the very first weekend I came home. So I came home, and that weekend I had to make it back here to Shiprock right away to be able to get to that class. So I finished it. And in that class, we have there's not to go too deep into it, but there's a point where we go into a very deep meditative mode, where I go into a very deep meditative mode. And when I'm in this mode, the third eye sort of turns on, and I can't really, I don't control what comes or what thoughts come. It's just these visions come, and these colors and sensations and messages. It's very beautiful to get in tune in that moment of just inward looking. And as we went through my master level, I had this message come to me. And in that moment, what was happening was I was sort of on this mind's eye journey, and I was being led through this space, and I met a couple of my guides who were there. And then suddenly I was gifted this robe, and it came out, and it was like an old warrior robe. It was a woven, beautiful robe. And it came out at me, and it was for me. And as I gazed at it, it was so beautiful. And it like was turning and just like in front of me. And as I was gazing at it and looking at it, and I kept looking close, I couldn't quite catch a good look at it, because every time I thought I caught a good look at it, it would shift, it would change. And it was like these beautiful prismatic geometric colors and beautiful, and it would stop for a moment, and I'm like, wow, and then it would shift, and then it would shift into like a thunderbird and different colors. And I was like, gosh, but would you just let me get a good look at you? I'm like, let me look. And I was like, what's going on? Why can't I get a look at it? And then as I was looking at it, I was like, it keeps changing. And then that moment when I said it keeps changing, this present came over and said, you are the changing one. And I was like, oh, in my meditation, I sat with that, and I thought, I'm the changing one. I'm the changing one. And so when I got through that meditation, I thought to myself, like, that was very curious. Like, what does the changing one? What is the changing one? Like, I'm the changing one. And then it started to strike me that I started to understand that as I was looking at that robe in my vision, it wasn't the robe that was shifting. It wasn't the robe that was changing. It was me that was changing. So as I was gazing at it, it was almost as if it was mirroring me. And so I was so curious about that. And so I really, really loved that. And as I was pondering that, I was going, I wrote down in my journal, I kind of went through it, and I said, I am the changing one. So I said, okay, I'll take that. I am the changing one. But truly, for me in that moment, I was like, what does that really mean? And so as I started to look back at reviewing, so this is the beautiful thing about the season of the North. So when I say the season of the North, what I mean is the cold, the winter. It's cold, it's dark. And what we do, I feel like our ancestors, what we did, I feel like we would create community in this time. We would reflect, we would learn, we would look back on the year, and we wouldn't necessarily plan what would happen, but we take a moment, I feel like, as a community and as a collective. Maybe perhaps I'm making this up, but I feel in my heart that we used to come together as a collective in the wintertime, and we used to reflect on the things. And that's why we have so many stories around this time. So when I got that vision on my third Reiki attunement, I came back to myself this winter, and a whole lot of changes happened. Like I said, in October, my grandpa passed, and just a whole lot of changes happening, and grief and sadness, but at the same time, such a profound, deep feeling of gratitude and like love and connection, but also like that pain of departure. And I just really sort of sat with that. And this past winter, as I began to reflect and as I began to look back, I went back to my yoga notes, to when I spent time in India, and I went back and I read my journal and I read the notes that I took from my gurus there. And one of the teachings really stood out to me when I went back. And it was a teaching from my philosophy teacher, my philosophy guru at the Vinyasa Yogashala in Rishikesh, India. He told me about the concept called Sat Chit Ananda. Sat Chit Ananda is a combination of words that means truth, consciousness, and bliss, or joyful bliss. My guru had told me this. The term Satchitananda is a state in which duality does not exist for a yogi. He is so much in union with supreme consciousness or awareness that the universe does not exist separate from him. He is in union with the Atman, the unchanging one. And as I sat with that and I read that, I understood what the changing one meant. It's finding the divine unchanging through the changes, to see the intense duality of this world and flipping it to knowing there is no dichotomy, just perspective, to understand that there is no changing and change itself, to narrow down understanding to one point on a spectrum is limiting the very nature of existence. Life is many perspectives, but also one at the same time, because we're all just human, and yet we all carry with us something peculiar, a spirit or a life force from something or someplace. And this human experience drives me to find that one thing in the chaos. And I want to thank you all again for allowing me this space to share this with you, because I feel like just sharing this story has brought me to a space where I truly, deeply understand what that name means, the changing one. And I want to thank you for allowing me the space to reflect on that and to bring that meaning back to me and to really, truly let that resonate. So I really wanted to thank you again. Thank you so much for sharing this space with me, everybody. And I don't know if there's any questions or comments. Please do let me know if there's any questions or comments. If not, thank you so much for joining me. I'd like to go ahead and just close out the space with a really brief closing meditation. So thank you all for coming and joining with me. So let's just take a moment here to close out the space and to honor the time you all spent with me and the space of the heart that you did share with me. And I thank you again for allowing me this space to reflect on the things that I needed to find and to help me truly settle into a space of understanding what the changing one is within myself, and helping me to manifest a physical trail of honoring those two spirits within myself. And with that being said, I wanted to just one briefly last thing before we move on. And the reason why I wanted to read this one piece, and this is from my journal, the reason I chose the term double spirit, and this is the last piece that I'm going to share. So the reason I chose double spirit was, this is taken from February of last year. And this was my sort of journal entry. So I had to deconstruct the colonized term two spirit in order to fully understand. I had to live it to understand it. Two spirit is not in relation to anything to do with gender or sexuality. It's much more complex than that. One has to strip away all else in ego to be able to fully feel and understand what the union of the two forces within become. The union of these two forces bring into fruition a wholeness that I can only explain as a knowing, a sense of being seen, to see myself not as a human looking upon a human, but a spirit gazing upon a spirit. And in this seeing, I feel held, I feel aware, and never alone again will I be. And that's just a reading out of my journal, and that's why I had chose the term double spirit to commemorate this story. So thank you again, and we'll bring it to close with just a brief breathing. So again, thank you so much. Go ahead, I invite you to close your eyes if you are able to. Drawing in the breath at your own capacity. Just noticing the breath, that's all. Breathing in, breathing out. And I invite you to reflect on something that struck you in the past half hour, whether it be good or bad. I just invite you to see it as an experience and breathe into it. And bring to mind what felt deep, full, and reverberating for you. Breathe into that. And notice in the body where you feel that reverberating, that resonation. And now I ask that you take a moment to just notice what's happening to your breath, what's happening in your body. Notice for a moment where your attention is calling you. Maybe it's calling for a deeper breath or an audible exhale. Maybe a roll in the neck. And I invite you to do that for yourself, whatever that may be. And when you're ready, only when you're ready, I ask you, slowly flutter your eyes open. And thank you so much, relatives, for joining me. I love you so much, and I'll see you again soon for another story time. Bye-bye, everybody.